All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Here.
Jennifer Ray,
Here.
Jason Zadunik,
Here.
Jennifer Cliff,
Here.
Cheryl Maddox Smith,
Here.
Cassidy Thomas,
Here.
Eric Smith,
Okay, and I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Zadudnik, support by Mrs. Klipp. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Cambenzi. Appreciate everybody coming out this evening. Want to start the superintendent report with our very professionally dressed Marquette Senior High School Athletic Director, Mr. Jackson Ingalls.
That's right.
Mr. Ingalls.
Officially in the minutes now.
Looking incredible.
Thank you, Mr. Sedgwick. This is my first time presenting to the board, and I'm very happy to do it and talk about our school year this year. It was a very fun year, and I'm going to go through and highlight some team and individual successes. Our fall season set the tone. Cross country saw both our boys and girls teams crowned UP champions, led by standout performances across the team. Football posted a 6-3 overall record, finishing 5-1 in the Big North, and filling Friday and Saturday nights with community pride. Our boys soccer team went 16-4-2, winning the district title. Girls tennis finished 4th in the UP meet. Volleyball battled throughout the season, finishing 9-7 in dual match record and 4-4 in the conference. Dance and cheerleading added energy and enthusiasm to the football games, and our mountain biking team repeated as Wisconsin state champions, showing just how far-reaching our student athletes' talents are. As the snow started to fall, winter sports arrived. Our student athletes continued to shine during the winter. Boys basketball finished 22-4, winning the district title and advancing to the Class A regional final to reach the round of 16. Girls basketball ended with an 11-14 record and a 4-4 mark in the conference, making clear strides in teamwork and consistency throughout the season. Hockey won the regional title and reached the Division II state quarterfinal in the round of 8. Swim and dive swept the UP once again, with the boys and girls teams crowned UP champions thanks to a strong foundation and senior leadership over the years. Alpine skiing took home the boys' state title, while the girls placed 4th in the state meet. Nordic skiing continued its championship tradition by winning the Michigan state title. Wrestling produced a regional individual qualifier. Gymnastics competed in the regional meet at Rockford. Bowling sent a male to the individual state finals. Figure skating had skaters qualify for the Michigan State Championships, and dance and cheer introduced new routines and provided great energy at all the basketball games. As the snow melted eventually, spring arrived. Our teams finished the year on a strong note. Boys golf won the UP final, and girls golf finished as UP runner-ups. Boys tennis captured their first UP title since 2009, a huge achievement led by depth and top-tier singles play. Boys track were crowned UP champions, while girls track and field finished a very strong second. Baseball and softball posted their best records in years, showing big improvement and narrowly falling in a tough district matchup against Traverse City, and girls soccer wrapped up the spring with a strong effort, ending in a close district loss to Gaylord. It was a memorable year of team success at Marquette. But throughout the year, we recognized athletes of the month, each chosen for his or her individual performance and leadership. To start off for September, Seppi Camilli broke the school record in cross country, and Brianna Anderson led the volleyball team as a senior. Drew Bradley was our top football player, and Sam Paternoster won her second straight mountain biking state title. Trevor Crandell stood out in swim and dive, while Yara Sprouse, a freshman, led our cheer team with positivity and spirit. In December, Jacob McPhee broke the basketball career rebounding record, and Olivia Mervich was a standout performer on the basketball court and dance. Talon Smith led on the wrestling mat, and Aubrey Blackburn shined in girls basketball. Cole Kelly, our starting goalie, anchored a strong hockey defense, while Annabelle Olila led gymnastics with consistency, composure, and leadership. Jackson Germu made headlines and broke school records as the point guard, while Hallie Haynes elevated the softball program in March. In April, James Barch broke the school record for the 3200, and Jocelyn Luzo remained a leader for girls soccer in her senior season. In May, Chase Thompson led boys tennis to a UP title, while Maya Mackey Warren, a key in multiple relay wins, is headed to NMU to continue her track career. We also recognized our teammates of the year, Parker Saunders in basketball and Peyton Plow in tennis and basketball, for their outstanding character and leadership. And finally, the highest award in athletics is the Athlete of the Year. Chase Thompson, the male, was a 16-time varsity letter award winner in his 4-year career in cross country, swimming, diving, tennis, and track and field, while maintaining a 4.2 GPA. He'll continue his academic and running career at Minnesota Duluth, where he will be on the cross country and track teams. Aubrey Blackburn, a 3-season letter award winner in tennis, basketball, and track, made a lasting impact in each program and will go on to play college basketball at Bay in Escanaba. Both Mr. Thompson and Ms. Blackburn have represented our school with integrity, balance, dedication, humility, and a deep commitment to excellence. They are the best of what we hope to see from our student athletes. To conclude, I want to reaffirm my commitment to leading Marquette athletics with clarity, accountability, transparency, and purpose. This past year has been a testament to the incredible talent, dedication, and character of our student athletes, and I'm extremely proud of what our student athletes and coaches have accomplished. That success didn't happen by chance. It was built by people. Coaches, families, teachers, custodians, bus drivers, secretaries, athletic trainers, game workers, officials, and volunteers, and by the continued support and leadership of the board and superintendent. I believe deeply in what high school athletics can do for kids, and I see this every day. I see how a good coach can change a life. I see how a team can become a second family, and for some, a first family. And I see how lessons learned on the playing surface help shape these young people, help shape who these young people will become for the rest of their lives. But let me be clear, this is only the beginning. We've laid a strong foundation, and now is the time to build. The bar is high, and it should be. We're not just maintaining a program, we're elevating it. I'm here to lead with energy, professionalism, and vision. I'm committed to pushing our program forward to ensure that Marquette Athletics continues to be a source of pride, unity, and excellence for our school and our community. My job is to now make sure we don't just protect that momentum, we build on it. That we keep growing, not just in championships, but in the experience we provide to every student athlete who wears the red and white of Marquette. I'm honored to serve this school, this community, and these student athletes. Thank you for your time tonight. I look forward to seeing you this fall at our home athletic events. God bless you, and go Sentinels.
Woo! Yeah, you're in trouble. That was great, Mr. Ingles.
Well done. Very well done, Mr. Ingles. That was thorough. High energy, a lot of information. Thank you for the update. Athletics is certainly a phenomenal part of our program and one that many students benefit from. So, board members, you might want to turn your chairs. The only way you can see the screen is by turning, although you have hard copies of the presentations in your packets. Mrs. Hopper, do they? Oh, they don't have this one. I apologize. So you don't have this
presentation.
presentation.
Actually sit in the.
So yeah, if you want to move to the front row, by all means.
To watch that.
So this is a co-presentation with our Student Achievement Coordinator, Ms. Kathleen Stiles. Her piece is going to come up here a little bit later in the presentation. This is actually a very similar presentation to one that I had given previously to the board and which I gave as part of our recent strategic planning meeting. The biggest difference between this presentation and those that there's two real big differences. One, we actually have some data embedded in the presentation, survey results. We recently gave strategic planning surveys. This is actually the third cycle of giving those surveys, so we have data over 3 cycles. That's pretty powerful data for doing strategic planning, so we've embedded some of that data in this presentation. And we also have some enhanced technology within the presentation, thanks to Courtney Larson, who's in the audience. Thank you, Courtney, for taking some tools, some tips that we learned in a recent training from a gentleman by the name of Myron Dewick, British Columbia. He gave us some great strategies for enhancing our presentation, and I think you'll notice some improvement to help tell the story so it's not just my words. Anyway, whenever we're talking about strategic planning, we want to stay grounded on our mission. and that is to maximize the academic potential of every child. And I think you'll see in this presentation that we're talking about more than just academics, a holistic approach where we're looking at the social emotional needs of our students. And you're going to see a theme or hear a theme of infrastructure in this presentation as well. So that mission is the foundation for the strategic plan. We didn't include all the objectives and goals for this presentation for ease of the reading of the slide, but you see the 6 groups that that are part of strategic planning, and each group is chaired by one of our administrators. Student achievement, our district wellness team, professional development, and Courtney, I see our first typo with wellness team up there twice. We're missing finance. So Mr. Lampman, I'm sorry, but your group is not adequately represented. We will fix that for the next go around. But we'll replace finance with one of the wellness team groups, student achievement, and facilities and learning environment. I talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it really is some of the core principles that drive education, especially post-COVID 21st century, which is a much different environment than what I started in. Talking first about physiological needs, essentially students are never going to reach that self-actualization, that point of really realizing their full potential if they don't have these core needs met. And as you work up the pyramid, you're starting with those core needs that are absolutely essential for kids to be successful. And as you work up the pyramid, maybe a greater likelihood of having obstacles, unique obstacles to the individual learner that are going to be in place, whereas those physiological needs are across the board necessary for students to be successful. So physiological needs, and what I want to do is highlight some of the actual initiatives that are in place to address those physiological needs. I've said this anecdotally. Obviously, we know what physiological needs are, basic needs of food, water, shelter, clothing, and we're doing that. We have free breakfast and lunch. We have a program that's been in place for a couple of years now where we've installed filtered bottle filling stations throughout the district, and we've greatly enhanced a number of those filling stations. There is legislation that's driving these types of improvements throughout public schools in Michigan. We're well ahead of the curve since we've been working on this for quite some time. Clothing, you know about Coats for Kids. I'm sure you've heard about Rock the Socks. We have a variety of building level programs where we give free clothing, where we really meet the kids' needs, the individual kids' needs, physiological needs, especially important during the winter months, of course, in Marquette, and even unique days like this one where it's quite hot. Air filters, you may not know that there's air filters, that we have devices, that we have units throughout the district, and I know the board has heard me talk about HVAC systems that have been put in place, such as Bothwell, where we have a new unit where that building is now much safer, much healthier for students to learn in, and we're soon going to be replacing the pod AC. We're actually in the part of the high school where the pod AC actually controls the airflow or lack thereof tonight, and it is uncomfortable. So when we talk about potential barriers to student learning and MTSS, right, it's all about removing barriers. Think about the barrier that we're experiencing tonight with the heat in this room. Tell me it wouldn't be hard for you to sit through an hour and a half long presentation. Now, this is not going to be an hour and a half, but just imagine if it was. So, and then more to say about suitable infrastructure. Again, potential barriers to learning. We're working hard on infrastructure. We've done a great job with what we have, and we'll talk a little bit more about what the resources that are available and the projects that we've done. But clearly infrastructure, that idea of shelter, let's go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You don't give students adequate shelter, or in this case, a proper learning environment. That's going to be a barrier to their learning. Safety and security is next up Maslow's list. I've talked significantly about safety and security over the years. You've heard me talk about all of these initiatives. I'm not going to list them off again today. Thanks to grant money and local dollars that we've invested, we have done made significant improvements in the safety and security of our buildings, and that, of course, is necessary for students to feel safe in a building, to feel safe in a school in order for them to learn effectively. But just again, I want to definitely highlight the PA systems, the cameras, the radio systems, and the maps, which were instrumental in a very unique and successful experience recently, even with the district-wide drill. Those technologies are greatly improving our communications at all times, including during emergencies. But we are certainly focused first and foremost on safety and security for our students, and we will continue to be as we move forward. Here's where we get into some feedback from the community, staff, and students. Again, there's 3 surveys that we gave earlier this spring, and we embedded some of those survey results. 96% students, staff, and community felt that our buildings were safe. I think that's pretty powerful. Some more data on safety. First off, 81% of staff and 88% of the community satisfied with how we've used past millage bond issues. And you've heard me talk about the structure, safety infrastructure, programming structure of my presentations. That's what we have here, along with some evidence of different initiatives, different projects that we've taken on to address those 3 components. On the top, you see examples of our PA systems. In the middle top row is an example of our new security entrances and our camera system, which I alluded to in the top right. Middle row, when you're talking about basic infrastructure, we have parking lots, we have mechanical and outdoor learning spaces to the right. And then programming, you've heard me talk about, I love my acronyms and my mnemonic devices, but the academics, the athletics, and the arts. So on the bottom, when we think about programming, we have an example of athletics and academics with our new science labs, and then our new ADA entrances at Kaufman for the arts. Short term, talk about how much money we have going in and how much money we have going out. So in the short term, or as far as revenue sources, we have a $1.3 million a year sinking fund. That is helpful, but you'll see in light of the need, just immediate need, not adequate. So this summer we have $3 million worth of projects. I could quickly list those off, but I won't at this time, just to save a little time. The amount of money coming in, the amount of money going out short term is not adequate. It's similar long term. Ms. Ray, this is for you, just to give you a little bit better demonstration of the long term need. Long animation of this slide to indicate that our long-term need. We had $100 million of infrastructure needs identified internally. You'll soon hear me talk about a statewide infrastructure that confirmed that amount. But what we have coming in and what we have going out, short-term and long-term, is certainly going to be an obstacle to our continued success if it is not addressed. So we have representatives from GEI and IDI. We have Isaac Roberts here tonight, engineer from GEI, and Craig Carmody from IDI, working on that pronunciation. And they are here to talk a little bit more about our construction manager, which I'll get to shortly. But what you saw on that slide was our effort to encapsulate a lot of work into one slide. On the right, you saw pages scrolling through. Those were basically a synopsis of internal audits that we've done to come up with the results that you then see on the screen. You have roughly $61 million worth of prioritized projects and over $112 million worth of projects identified after our internal audits. That's not exorbitant. Those are basic infrastructure needs in our district. And then we recently received the results from a statewide study which essentially reinforced the same information. It's not the same list, but I think it's notable that the state came up with over $100 worth of critical infrastructure needs at Marquette Area Public Schools. $22 billion, in fact, throughout the state. Now, Michigan's unique in that it doesn't provide funding for infrastructure, unfortunately, at least for public schools. So they ask us to go to our local community in an effort to pay for that or to address those needs. And we've done so through various initiatives. The sinking fund I mentioned, we've put money in capital projects, we've applied for grants, and you'll hear Jim talk a little bit more on finances. But again, $102 million roughly. They also told us how much it costs to replace the facilities. That's interesting information. Almost $350 million to replace our facilities. We have over 750,000 square feet of buildings. So $350 million is not an unreasonable figure when you're talking about that much infrastructure. So obviously we're going to go with going with repairing the facilities, repairing rather than replacing. A little glimpse of how MAPS rates compared to other public schools as far as the amount that we levy from our community to address infrastructure. Although the community may feel like there's significant taxes that they bear, it's not necessarily from MAPS. So MAPS as compared to local districts, these are more immediate proximity to MAPS, certainly very low in comparison to other districts in our area. And then when you expand that, it's even more stark, the difference between what MAPS levies and other public schools in this region. 46% of our staff. Now, we saw some great data when we reviewed this, the surveys from the strategic planning initiative that I mentioned. But this one is notable. 46% of our staff felt that our facilities were suitable for teaching and learning, and that's a 25% decrease from the first time we gave this survey in 2017. 95% of the staff and 90% of the community said they'd support a bond issue to improve the infrastructure. Obviously, we know who our population is when we're surveying staff, but it's worth noting for the community, we're targeting families. That's where we have the easiest means of communicating. But still, 90% of our families support a bond issue in the future to address infrastructure. Going back to Maslow's, we're working up the triangle, working up the pyramid, further towards self-actualization. I mentioned COVID, and we're really intentional here about addressing the needs of students beyond just those basic physiological safety, security needs. Now we're getting into some initiatives such as social emotional learning. We talked about collective efficacy. That was a focus in our district. We really are trying to build smaller communities within our buildings, especially larger populations like the one at the high school here. But love and belonging, if you look at the right, those are initiatives. I won't read them off, you can read. But at the top of the continuum is MTSS, and that really is that systemic view of addressing student achievement, and that's why we put it at the top. All those other initiatives are really geared towards accomplishing the same task. And notably, again, 95% of students said that they have at least one adult at their school who could help them and support them if needed, and maybe of even more importance is that that's a 13% increase from 2017. So it appears that the data is supporting what we're working on. Self-esteem, very similar theme. 93% of our community feels welcomed at MAPS, and 72% of students were able to meet students of different backgrounds. That may not seem like a high mark, but it's a 30% increase from 2017. And 95% of our staff and community said MAPS graduates were prepared to continue their formal education. I think that's a pretty good litmus test for how well we're doing with our academic programming. 98% of staff and 93% of the community would recommend MAPS to other families. There's not much better credit or much better appreciation shown than somebody wanting to actually recommend your district to other families. I think that's a powerful statistic. And 95% of students were optimistic about their future, which is a 15% increase from 2007. 95% of students are proud to be graduating from MAPS. I think that's remarkable, and also an 8% increase from 2017. You've heard me talk about daily attendance or attendance in general. Our attendance rates are very strong, and you'll see that in some of these marks here. Our marks, whether it's the full day attendance rate or what we're reporting through our student information system, which is what SIS stands for, almost 100% consistently across all 7 of our buildings, which are listed in that graphic. Now we reach the top of the pyramid, self-actualization and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is where students are best able to reach their academic potential, and I think we capture that. Maybe I guess a statistic that captures that appropriately is the fact that 93% of our students believe their life has a purpose. Very existential type question to ask of students. Now these are seniors, so they have the ability to grasp that type of concept, but that's a powerful statistic to me, and one that I think really captures the idea of self-actualization. That's also a 6% increase from 2017. Real quick, our 5-year plan. I talk about MTSS implementation. We're on the pathway towards full implementation. We started in 22-23 with a MTSS 101, collective efficacy, the idea of the shared belief that we can make changes together that are positively going to impact students. Moving on to positive behavior intervention and support, which we talked about previously. That was our focus this past year. We're focused on social emotional behavioral learning for 25-26, and we wrap it all up with MTSS, implementing MTSS with fidelity in 26 and 27. At this point, I'm gonna ask Mrs. Kathleen Stiles to step up and talk a little bit more about some data that supports student achievement.
I get the fun stuff. First of all, I want to say that when Jackson was reading off names, Holly and I, former elementary teachers, went back and forth saying, that one was mine. Nope, that one was mine. That was mine, which was fun to see our former elementary students doing so well. So up here you have a benchmark assessment called NWEA. On the left you see reading, on the right you see math. And what you want to focus on here is a norm. This is nationally normed, so 50% is the norm. That's where most people perform. And so when we're above that, either achievement on the left part of that or growth on the right, that's something to celebrate. In math, focus on the blue. These are things we never see. So in math, we've really started implementing the foundations of math. There's been a lot of work done at the K1-2 level. And we're seeing growth way beyond what we've seen in previous years. So here's reading 3 through 8 over time. You see all the way back to COVID to current. Yellow is bad, blue is good. And now in this year, you can see that we've had a gradual increase in those scores since COVID. So the efforts are working, the things we've implemented and the investments we've made. Here's our math over time, back from COVID all the way to now. Significant increases. Doesn't that ever make everybody smile? Isn't it fun to see that? Okay, so K-2, we started doing a different, more age-appropriate test called FastBridge. It's delivered one-on-one, and you don't just put a kid on a computer because we know they just click and move on. So in JKK and 1, you can see 3 years of data, and you can look at the increase this spring, so a gradual increase. And then our second graders over time, another gradual increase. And here math, you can see spring of 2022 all the way to current. Significant increase. And here in our second grade, which is wow, all those foundational skills have been taught. And that should benefit our middle school and high school as our students come through. So I don't know if you've heard much about the playbook. As the MTSS coordinator, I'm in charge of helping facilitate writing our processes down from how we solve things at the district level, the building level, the grade level, and the individual student level. First, we purchased a data warehouse called EduClimber, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide. But it's basically where we house all of our attendance data, behavior data, grades, state assessments, so that we can problem solve at all of those 4 different levels. We established a writing team. Oddly enough, 8 people wanted to write this with me, so I was really grateful for that. We divided and conquered. We each took a section, we began writing, we brought it back to larger teams for feedback and review, and we had a draft. We gave them a draft. And now this summer, we have 3 dates set to revise that draft. It's a living document, which will continue to, evolve, but we hope to have that in the hands of our staff in the fall. So EduClimber, this is an important thing. The basis of MTSS is using data to drive decisions. And so we found that 81% of our staff felt like data-driven decision-making is enhancing student learning and achievement, which is significant. Now I get to invite up my good friend Holly. You'll see we had some work to do in reading. We had some significant growth in math, while Holly and I have been sort of studying over 2 years what that need might be, so I'll pass it on to her.
So this actually started when MAPS worked with the Carey team in Minnesota to look at what are we doing for instruction through the MTSS lens. And one of the things that was identified was systematic and explicit instruction in literacy. So at that time, we adopted a few curriculum pieces to support word recognition, phonics, phonological awareness in our students. But the other side of what we call the reading rope was, do you want to click through this? I want to make sure. I can't remember which comes next. The other side of the reading rope is more about knowledge building and the language comprehension piece, and that's the piece that's been missing. So 2 years ago, Kathleen and I led our district K-5 ELA committee we began the vetting process of looking at curriculums, utilizing a curriculum adoption process that it would be recommended throughout the state of Michigan. So going to research supported sources to first begin to sort down curriculum possibilities for us. At the same time, the Carey team was working with the state of Minnesota, and their curriculum review process was even stronger and more stringent, looking for more rigor and more student success than any of the others. They identified multiple curriculums, 2 of which we had already chosen for MAPS, which was exciting, like 2 out of 5. There was one curriculum that fit our missing piece, which is that language comprehension, and that's wit and wisdom. So last year, or 2 years ago, we started working with the wit and wisdom company, and we identified the need to do a pilot with wit and wisdom. And in that pilot, we wanted to make sure we were testing teacher usability, student usability, and response to the curriculum, and then just how does the curriculum work in throughout a pilot, so that if we were to adopt the curriculum, how can we find we tell the teachers the good, the bad, and the ugly. And throughout the last year, 24-25, we had several, all grade levels, did do a pilot. We had teams at each building working through that pilot. They did 2 modules, there's 4 total, 1 bonus, so they did 2. And we had a couple of grade level teams want to do the 3rd to get more experiential information. So tonight, because of the success of our pilot, we believe it offers the rigor needed for our MAP students, that missing piece of the puzzle. Are we building our students' knowledge? Are we building a rich vocabularies, background knowledge that will lead to future success in literacy? And we fully believe wit and wisdom is it, and we believe that our pilot, having this 2-year process, really purposeful and intentional look at how it works in classrooms, and our teachers had to grapple with it, and they offered us the ugly, the things that were hard for them, so that we can plan an implementation that works around that. Ultimately, walking in classrooms of students experiencing wit and wisdom curriculum, the engagement was very high for students, seeing them talk about text, real text. These are, our previous ELA curriculum was comprehensive. It included all the pieces in one. And I think, over time we've learned that curriculums that try to do everything are going to water out something. So wit and wisdom is a narrow lens that fits the last piece, which is this knowledge building piece. I'm looking at Kathleen. We spent a lot of time with this and have geeked out on it quite a lot. But in all reality, the magic is seeing kids with books and friends reading and wanting to read, and talking to their teachers. At my school, I was lucky enough to have 3 grade levels pilot, and seeing 2nd graders. I remember walking in during one of the lessons thinking, these kids don't look or sound like 2nd graders. They sound much older, because they are engaging in discussions about what they're reading. And that's what we really want to see from our students, and a piece we've been missing.
And the good news is the last little bullet up there, that it's been fully funded out of a grant I wrote and that Jim will help manage, called 35J. So that big bottom number that you guys will have in your packets will be grant funded.
Good job, Kim.
Yep. And so, in conclusion, we plan to, if you support, move forward with adoption. And it's really a strategic plan over the next 3 years, not to overwhelm teachers, but to learn each piece one at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, as we transition, if you guys want to make your way back, I think that's the last presentation that you have to be in the audience to see. Mr. Lambden's presentation is hard copy. Just to let the cat out of the bag a bit, that grant is over $300,000 that we're talking about. This is a significant purchase that we're asking you to approve tonight, but we have grants that are covering the entire thing. So I'm going to make my way back over to the seat as well, and I'll have you up shortly, Mr. Roberts. Real briefly, trying to keep this meeting moving along. I mentioned infrastructure in my presentation, just a little bit more about infrastructure. We have a team that meets regularly. That team consists of MAP staff, board members, and also consultants from 2 different architectural engineering firms, some of whom are with us tonight. And one of the most recent tasks that the board has actually charged me with at our previous meeting is to find a construction manager to help us with a potential bond issue, the scope of which is yet to be determined, but the board did direct me to release an RFP, and we did that since the last meeting when I was given that directive. We released the RFP, and I asked Mr. Roberts from GEI. GEI is an architectural engineering firm that works as MAP's owner's rep, so it seemed appropriate that Mr. Roberts would help facilitate the process of selecting a construction manager. We also have Craig Carmody here from IDI, former superintendent and very knowledgeable with respect to bond issues, and has a lot of experience working with construction managers as well. Between Mr. Roberts and Mr. Carmody, I'm hoping that we can answer your questions, any questions that you might have. And Mr. Roberts, if you could step up, give us a synopsis of the submissions that we received regarding that RFP for a construction manager.
Yeah, so as Zach indicated, we sent out an RFP, request for proposal for construction management services on a project ranging from $60 million to $100 million. Bids were due last Tuesday. We received 4 proposals from 4 companies throughout the state of Michigan. We received 4 bids from companies throughout the state of Michigan. They are Clark Construction, Myron Construction, Wolgas Corporation, and Gunlock Champion Incorporated. 2 of which are local. Myron and Gunlock are local here in the UP. Wolgas and Clark are located downstate. I believe you guys have copies of all the RFPs. Some of them are up to 50 pages long, so I don't want to go into too much detail on that. And I believe Zach has a more in-depth breakdown of the requirements that he was looking for as far as a construction management service.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Roberts. If you could just stay up there for a minute in case the board has questions for you. But the RFP criteria that we used were the following categories: relevant experience and qualifications, responsiveness, team compatibility, local presence, pre-bond, pre-construction capabilities, proposed team structure and fee structure. And we had 4 great proposals. We do very much appreciate all 4 companies and their interest in working with Marquette Area Public Schools. Again, thinking about relevant experience, thinking about qualifications, responsiveness, etc. And I want to highlight a couple of areas that I was particularly interested in, and that would be the local presence, whether or not there was a local presence from these potential CM companies, and also the extent to which they provided pre-bond services. Much of the need that we've identified in the meetings I alluded to earlier, much of the need we have at MAPS right now, or the lack of capacity, if you will, for a project this size, lies in some of those pre-bond, pre-construction services that are going to be required for something of this scale. So when looking at those particular categories in light of the 6 criteria that I outlined from the RFP, we identified, well, let me just list them off. So Myron had a local presence, and they also provided those pre-bond services. Gunlock had a local presence, but they didn't highlight those pre-bond services. Clark highlighted the pre-bond services, but didn't necessarily have a local presence. Although I will say they met with us today. They have a brand office in Alpena, and it sounds like they're very interested in being responsive to our needs locally. And then the last one, the last company, Wolgast, they didn't have the local presence, nor did they have the pre-bond services that we were looking for. So at this point, as we think about moving forward in the process of selecting a CM, I do recommend that we do not interview Wolgast for the reasons I just mentioned. What I do recommend is that we interview the other 3. I have an interview structure outlined in your packet, and that interview structure, or that process, really it involves bringing a group together, an interview committee together, have that interview committee consist of myself, Mr. Lampman, Mr. Vanderscaff, our Auxiliary Services Director. I would like to include the 3 board members that have been part of the conversation thus far. That's Ms. Cambenzi, Ms. Ray, and Mr. Zadunik. And then we have a tentative date identified of July 1st for conducting interviews. We have some questions, specific questions listed that I think will identify the criteria that I listed from the RFP, and a structure that I think will make sure that there's a very fair and transparent process for selecting a construction manager. And then that committee would be charged with ultimately bringing a recommendation to the Board of Education for our next meeting, at which point the board would ultimately decide who would be awarded the project. Now, it's important to note the board is not necessarily eliminating any of the 4 candidates. I'm just making a recommendation on the 3 that I feel we should move forward with interviews for, and then ultimately have that committee bring a recommendation to our next meeting in July. Any questions for Mr. Roberts, Mr. Carmody, or myself about the construction manager selection process? Okay, well, hearing none, you will see that action item later in the agenda for the board to consider, and we'll at this point turn over the mic, the podium, if you will, to Mr. Lampman. It's that time of year where he presents his final budget amendment for the 24-25 school year, and also his initial budget for the 25-26 school year. So Mr. Lampman, if you could come up. Thanks again, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Carmody, and Ms. Musco and Ms. Stiles for your help tonight.
I considered putting the jacket on for this. I thought maybe it would motivate me to get through this a little faster, but no. So the board should have a hard packet of the hard copy of in your packet of the presentation this evening. First of all, I want to say that we're closing in on a $50 million budget for MAPS, and there is a lot of moving parts to the budget, and it isn't just myself involved in the preparation. There is a team of people working on this. Ms. Stile included has areas that she works on. So I just want to give acknowledgement to the team of people behind the scenes that are doing a lot of hard work as well. So where do I begin? This was somewhat of a challenge putting the budget together this year. The state of Michigan is required to have the education budget finalized by a July 1st date. And currently, as far as I could tell today, there's been no consensus yet at the state level as to how they're going to fund education for the 25-26 fiscal year. So what we did was we took a very conservative approach to how we put this budget together for 25-26, not knowing what our funding was going to look like for next year. For those of you who were on the board last year, as you may recall, there was agreement between the governor's office, the Senate, and the House as to, I think it was, if I recall, a $400 per pupil increase for the 24-25 school year. That wound up not materializing. And they instead gave us a one-time infusion of MIPSR's retirement fund dollars in lieu of a per pupil fund increase. So needless to say, we're kind of a little gun shy on what to expect from the state. Currently, the governor was proposing increasing per pupil to about $10,000 per student. Currently, we're at $9,608 per pupil. And maintaining the current categoricals that are out there, such as 31A, which funds safety and student mental health. The House's version, they were proposing increasing per pupil funding to $12,000 and removing all the individual categoricals such as 31AA for mental health and school safety, and basically give that money to the districts to do with as they please, well, feel is necessary at the local level. So kind of two different plans. And so again, we just from the get-go decided we were going to take a conservative approach, knowing full well we'll have to readdress this whenever the state comes up with their plan for funding education. So I just wanted to preface that. So on the first graph, we have the property tax millages that we've levied in the past and what we'll levy for 25-26. So for 25-26, we're looking at levying 18 mills for our operating non-homestead millage, 6 mills for commercial personal property, 0.9255 for our sinking fund, and 0.38 for our debt millage. This is actually going to be an agenda item later on in the evening, item 9E, where the board will officially adopt the tax millages that will be levied next year. Looking at enrollment. So we use a third-party company to put together for us enrollment projections. They use various demographic data, including local economics, birth rates, and various other information to try to project what likely scenarios would be for our enrollment in the future. We then kind of come up with a blended rate by using the most likely projection blended with a low projection. Again, taking that conservative approach to what our pupil count will be in the future. As you can see, the black line is actual, the blue line is the projection. So far, the last few years, we've exceeded the projections. Moving on to state aid. As I mentioned a minute ago, currently we're at $9,608 for our per pupil funding. That was the same threshold for 23-24, so there was no change. Looking forward to next year, we're conservatively going to say a $200 increase to our per pupil funding, which would raise it to $9,808. Again, that's a best guess. It's a conservative estimate. I wish I had a better crystal ball. So a $200 per pupil increase would equate to about a $640,000 increase in our state aid funding. And by the way, feel free to stop me as I go if you have any questions, because I can ramble, as you know. And as Ms. Stiles is quite aware as well. So looking at some of the revenue assumptions we use for 25, 26, we based on May 2025 property values for our tax revenue. We based other local revenues on prior year, with the exception of our investment income. I meant to look it up today because it's been a while since I've looked it up, but I think we're currently earning on our MyLoft investment portfolio a little over 4%, and that's tied to interest rates. There's a lot of pressure right now on the Federal Reserve to start lowering interest rates. Again, I wish I had a better crystal ball. I don't know if they're going to do so, but we assumed that we'll see some interest rate decreases over the next year, and we did bake that into our projections here. State revenues, again, based on $9,800 estimated per pupil foundation allowance. That's a guess. Still no consensus at the state level. MIPSers, for 24-25, we saw a decrease in the MIPSer stabilization rate down to 10.58%. MIPSers has come out and said beginning in October that rate's going to increase to 15.02%. So that was factored into our estimated budget. Federal revenues has been based on our preliminary allocations. We are moving more towards what a normal year would be for the district's federal awards now that our COVID dollars have all been exhausted. So our main sources of federal revenue in the school lunch fund would be the child nutrition program. In the general fund, it's largely our Title I dollars, Title I, Title II, Title IV, which again, Ms. Stiles is very familiar with the title program. And our Title VI Indian Education grant. So we're kind of moving back into what a quote unquote normal federal award year would be. And then we based all other revenues on the prior year or historical estimates. So looking at our general fund revenues, for the final amendment, we're looking at about $15.9 million in local revenue, $32 million in state, $651,000 in federal revenues, transfers in the general fund from food service of $105,000, and that's to cover administrative expenses that get charged to the food service account. So we're looking at revenues of $49,340,000 for 24-25. 25-26, we're looking at local revenues of $15.8 million. State revenues of $32.9 million, federal revenue estimated currently at $657,000, and again, an estimated $105,000 transfer in from the food service account to cover administrative costs. So it'd be about $49.5 million in general fund revenue. Next slide shows you a breakdown of those revenues. So by and large, the most significant revenue is the blue section of the pie, 32.9 for 25-26. That represents our state revenue. Followed then by taxes. We get about $9.2 million in tax revenue from local dollars, followed by our special ed allocation from Marisa, and then other local sources and federal. Moving on to general fund expenses. So, as the board's aware, last year we negotiated 3-year contracts with all of our staff. Those contracts are set to expire June 30 of 2027. So for 25-26, we based our salaries and benefits off of the existing contracts that are in place. Health insurance hard cap rates are going to increase 2.9% over where the 24-25 rate was. So under state law, under the hard cap, we only pay up to a certain percentage. and that percentage is increasing 2.9%. MIPSR's rates, as I mentioned, are going from 10.58% to 15.02%. We have not done any programming changes from 24-25, and I think that's significant because there were a lot of, as Mr. Sedgwick has mentioned in the past, there were a lot of supports put in place during the COVID years, and we've been trying to maintain those supports. I believe there's a social worker in every building currently, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Sedgwick.
Yeah, we have additional support, social workers, we have health aides, we have roving subs, we have instructional coaches, we have a summer school program, summer enrichment program that just started yesterday with 350 kids. Some phenomenal programming that comes with a cost, of course, and we, as Mr. Lamb said, made a effort to maintain those programs, even though some of the grant funding that initially incentivized us to start those programs or helped us pay for those programs have run their course.
And getting back to the presentation earlier this evening, I think having some of those supports in place has a bearing in the numbers in the data that you provided earlier, if I'm not mistaken. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, the
Yeah.
additional 23G and 35J have funded some of those initiatives. 31A, our at-risk funding, has funded our instructional coaches.
So it all ties together. In my time here, moving on, in the 3.5 years I've been with the district, we've replaced approximately half of the school bus fleet. Our goal was to get on a 2 bus per year purchase cycle. After speaking with our auxiliary services director, we did actually include 3 bus purchases for 25-26. So we do have $420,000 allocated in that budget for 3 purchases. I think then after that year, we'll probably be on the 2 bus per year purchase plan. That is our goal. And then all other expenditures were based off our prior year budget or historical trends. So looking at the general fund expenses, instruction for 24-25, we think we'll be at $27,661,000. Supporting services, $20,280,000. Community services, $221,000. Transfers out, $1,161,061. Now, of that, $1,150,000 is a transfer to the capital projects fund, which we've done the last couple of years. So that would be total expenses for 24-25 of $49,323,000. Looking into next year at 25-26, we're estimating instructional cost to be at $29,291,000. Supporting services at $20,336,000. Community services $132,000, and transfers $161,061. And what is notable there is for 25-26, currently we're not proposing a transfer to capital projects. Again, conservative budget. If we have a per pupil increase that's more significant than we've estimated, perhaps we'll go back and consider in a future amendment transferring money to capital projects. But currently, we don't have that planned. So overall, $49,921,000 for our proposed 25-26 general fund expenditures. And then this just breaks it out a different way. Our expenses by salaries and benefits. Sorry, let me catch up on slides here. So by far the biggest expense to the district is our salaries and benefits. Looking at 25-26 alone, that is a little over $42 million between salaries and benefits, which represents about 84% of the budget. So the other portion of the general fund operation is going to be funded off of 16% of our revenue. So it's we're a service industry, and the bulk of our dollars go into our employees. So looking at 25-26, 24.3 million for salaries, 17.67 for benefits, purchase services, 2.7 million, repairs and maintenance, a little over 1.1 million, supplies, round that up to 2.2 million, capital outlay 790,000, other expenses 490,000, transfers 535,000, broken out a different way. And then this just shows, again, graphically, what that breakout of the budget is. As you can see, the black is our salaries, 49%. Our benefits are in blue, 35%. So that's 84% of our anticipated 25-26 budget. So to summarize the general fund, looking at 24-25, we have revenues of $49,340,000, expenses of $49,323,000, resulting in net income of $16,424. We had a beginning fund balance of $18,305,000, and after adding $16,000 of net income to our beginning equity, we'll end up at $18,321,000 for 24-25. That gets broken out in several ways. There's a non-spendable portion for things like prepaid insurance and other items. Inventory, things of that nature fall under non-spendable. We commit 10% for future contingency, that's $4.9 million. Assigned for MTSS implementation, we did have $1.3 million set aside in prior years for MTSS implementation. We are starting to now spend down that $1.3 million set aside. So for the 24-25, we're looking at $1,234,000 set aside for MTSS, and $881,000 continue to be set aside for future school bus purchases. Looking at 25-26, again, revenues of $49,512,000, expenses $49,921,000. Resulting in a net loss of $408,632. Now again, we used a 200 per pupil number for estimating our state aid revenue. If that doubled to $400, say in the governor's proposal, that would put us back into the black. So again, I just want to be very clear, this is just a very conservative estimate. So that would bring our overall fund balance down to $17.9 million. Our unassigned would be $10,495,000, which is still a healthy fund balance. I would say the industry standard would be to maintain a fund balance that's at least 15% of operating expenses. Under the 25-26 budget, if you look at overall fund balance, that would be 36% of our operating costs, so well beyond the 15%. If you look at just what's available and currently in our unassigned, the $10,495,000, that would be 21%. So again, even just looking at our unassigned, that is still 6% higher than industry standard of 15%. Okay, moving on to the food service. This is another area that it's a best guess. Under the governor's proposal, she wanted to continue a universal free meal program. Under the House proposal, I believe they wanted to eliminate the universal meal program. They have not reconciled yet their plans, so we don't know if there will be a universal free meal program next year or not. We ran under the assumption that there will be, and so we're running under the kind of the assumption that we're gonna come in somewhere where we did with 24-25, but knowing that we're gonna have to do an amendment once the state reconciles their budget and informs us what local districts are gonna receive. So we have also been working on a spend down plan in our food service fund. we want to be somewhere around the 400,000 mark at a high end in food service, because we're not allowed to carry too much excess fund balance in our food service account. It does need to act kind of as a nonprofit. Us and a lot of districts coming out of COVID, we're in the same position where we grew excess fund balance. And as the board may recall, the board has approved a lot of various purchases in the last year or two for our food service program. So we've been rolling money back in, trying to improve our program. The other thing that we've done this year for 24-25 is we've been purchasing a lot more fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh produce, to help spend that down. So it isn't just equipment that we've been purchasing. We've also been rolling more money into fresh produce. Looking at 25-26, we're estimating local revenues of 78,000, state revenues 816,000, and federal revenues and commodities of 823,000. Overall food service expenses 1,996,000, resulting in a 25-26 net loss of $279,283. And this is based off of utilization too, and how many meals that we produce. So, you know, these figures tend to, vary a little bit depending on meal production. Looking at the summary for the food service fund, we have a beginning equity for 24-25 of $746,000, revenues of $1.8 million, expenses of $2,030,000, resulting in an ending fund balance for 24-25 of $533,000. Looking at 25-26, we have revenues of $1.7 million, expenses of $1,996,000, and we're projecting at this point an ending fund balance of $253,787, which gets us under our mark where we want to be fund balance wise. And again, this is assuming there's going to be a universal free meal program next year. It could change. Looking at the debt service fund, the debt service fund exists for the sole purpose of collecting taxes to pay the annual principal and interest payment on our 2016 bond. So 24-25, we're looking at revenues of $569,000, expenses of $657,000, resulting in a net loss of $88,825. For 25-26, we're looking at tax revenue of about $565,000, expenditures of $556,000, resulting in a net income of $9,104. So looking at the fund as a whole, we're projecting this year fund balance of $97,274. Looking at 25-26, after tax collection and debt payments, we're looking at an ending fund balance of $106,378. Again, this fund just works kind of as an in and an out. Capital projects. Capital projects fund, as I mentioned earlier, we've been transferring money in the last several years in order to build up a fund balance that we could utilize as a kind of a stopgap to the sinking fund. As Mr. Sedgwick mentioned earlier this evening in his presentation, the sinking fund takes in roughly $1.3 million. We had over $3 million worth of projects. And so we needed another funding source for those. So we've been trying to create a supplemental fund that we can use for projects that the sinking fund just doesn't have the capacity for currently. Anyway, looking at the 24-25 year, we think we'll be at about $1,088,000 in revenue, local revenue. We're transferring in an anticipated $1,150,000, expenditures of $1,837,000, resulting in net income of $400,712. Now, 25-26, the revenue drops significantly. As I mentioned, we're not transferring in the $1 million that we've done in the past. And also looking at our local revenues, that drops down to 140,000. That 140,000 really is the investment income that we're earning currently. We pared that down a little bit. The local revenues in 24-25, the lion's share of that is funding for the Shiras Planetarium project that the district is receiving money from the Friends of the Shiras Planetarium group that is fundraising for the work at the planetarium. So we're looking at an overall net loss of $492,832 for 25-26, based off expenditures of $782,000 for various projects that we're going to fund this year out of capital projects. So looking at the fund overall, we're anticipating an ending fund balance of $6.1 million at 24-25. And after funding projects out of the capital projects fund, we're looking at ending 25-26 at $5,616,000. And I know Mr. Sedgwick didn't go over this in his presentation, but I thought I'd throw a slide in just to show you the projects that we'll be working on this summer that will be funded through capital projects. So we'll be doing a playground, some playground work at Sandy Knoll. We'll be doing a roof at Sandy Knoll, playground at Cherry Creek, a boiler at Superior Hills, the pod HVAC here at MSHS, which Mr. Sedgwick discussed earlier. And we're also doing some facade work and a college and career readiness room up at the Market Alternative High School. So excluding the work that was being done on Shiras Planetarium, excluding the work that is being funded through various grants in the general fund, including the PA system, we're at almost $1.4 billion in projects that we're going to do this summer, funded by the Capital Projects Fund. Moving on to the sinking fund. And let me just say, I'm trying to get through it as fast as I can. Sinking fund. So we have tax revenue of $1.3 million this year, expenditures of about $1.7 million, resulting in a loss of $390,000. That's largely the science lab project that Mr. Sedgwick talked about earlier this evening. Looking at 25-26, we're proposing tax revenue of $1.3 million, expenses of $107,316, resulting in a net income of $1,208,614. Looking at the sinking fund overall, we're projecting an ending fund balance this year of $539,982. Looking at next year, we're projecting $1,748,596 in an ending fund balance. Again, we specifically elected not to fund anything out of the sinking fund during the summer of 25 in order to build that fund back up so we have, a larger dollar amount that we can do a bigger project with next summer. And then lastly, we have the Private Purpose Trust Fund. This is basically our scholarship fund. The revenue generally comes in the spring. We pay those out in the spring, generally around May. We started with a beginning fund balance of $307,000. We had revenues of about $134,500, scholarships totaling $127,000. So we're adding $7,500 this year to that fund, resulting in an ending fund balance of $314,000. Looking into next year, again, it's an estimate, about $125,000 in revenue, $118,000 in estimated scholarships that'll be paid out, resulting in a fund balance of $322,286. Any questions? And again, I was trying to get through as fast as I could.
Thank you.
Questions?
Two quick ones. For
Certainly.
The retirement UAL rate increases, if you covered it, I apologize. What led to that? And what is the impact for us?
So the impact for us is that, are you talking about the 10.58% that increases to 15.02?
Correct.
Okay. So what that means for us is that percentage is actually established by the state of Michigan on an annual basis. The Office of Retirement Services, actually. And so we're required to withhold from our employees that percentage. And well, I take that back. I misspoke. Sorry, the heat. We don't withhold it from our employees. Yeah, I misspoke. It's a benefit that we calculate based off the percentage that ORS tells us. And then we get that money back from ORS. So it comes through our state aid report as a reimbursement to us. So for our books, we have to show it as a revenue and as an expense, but it nets to zero on our books. But it is something that we do have to record based off of our payroll and report to ORS.
So there's no additional expense to us per se, other than
Per se,
line
it's
item.
right. It winds up being just basically a flow through to the district. The one thing that did impact, speaking of ORS, and I think I did mention it in some of the assumptions that were used, the one thing that came about after our March amendment, and probably the most significant, the most significant change that happened after our March amendment was ORS came out and said for employees that received a 3% healthcare option as part of their retirement plan, we had to refund all of those dollars that were collected from those particular employees going back to last October. So, and we have to continue that refund through the end of September. And so we estimated that would cost our district about $500,000. We only received about $324,000, $325,000 from the state to cover that mandated reimbursement. So again, it was only a partially funded mandate from the state. So it did hit our bottom line. The state acknowledged that it hit the bottom line of districts, and they had talked about seeking a legislative fix, and the legislative fix went nowhere. So there is we're estimating about $175,000 that the district is eating to be in compliance with that mandate from the state.
Thank you. And then the other one for local revenues, you had a local revenue estimated decrease of about $137,000. I mean, with property taxes, with property values seemingly, you go to buy a house, they're quite expensive comparatively. Just if you want to talk a little bit about where that.
We did. What's tricky is the increase in property taxes kind of gets offset by state aid. And so if there's a district that sees a lot of growth, the state will pare back their state aid. So that no districts really become a winner based off their local property tax value increases. And so that gets factored into our state aid. And I believe in the last state aid report, we saw the state had decreased our state aid a little bit. So we looked at that formula and we tried to factor in a reasonable amount for our property tax. What I mentioned earlier was we actively manage our investment portfolio, and so we had brought down our investment earnings, which would be that local share, by probably a conservative amount based off of the pressure being put on the Fed to reduce interest rates over the next year. I've heard as much as, pressuring the Fed, to go as much as 1 to 2%. Will it happen? I don't know, but knowing that we're going to have to revisit this budget anyway, because there's really no clear direction coming out of the state as to what this was. We took a conservative approach, and when we amend, we'll revisit this. And so this is kind of a worst case scenario in my view right now. And I would rather present a worst case scenario today than, present something that's going to be rainbows and unicorns that may not materialize. So I guess I'd rather bring you potentially good news down the road than bad news down the road, if that makes sense.
Under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you.
That's all I have for the superintendent report. Thank you, Mr. Landon. That was very well done.
Okay, so that was still under the superintendent's report? Or was that
Not
the-
necessarily, I'm sorry. We moved on to item 6.
Okay,
So that was
so,
6A.
comments from the public on the 2025-2026 budget? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to item 7, approving the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 12, 2025, minutes of the special meeting of June 2nd, 2025, the personnel report dated June 2025, and the financial reports of May 2025.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Zadudnik, supported by Mrs. Klipp. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Regular comments from the public? I don't have any.
Nope, got one.
Oh. Did you fill out a slip for us?
I did not, but I'd like to still address the board. I'm just sitting here. Is that okay, or?
We're supposed to fill out a slip before the meeting starts, and your slip's out in the hall. I saw you arrive late to the meeting, so that would be a decision. That is typically not per our policy that we would allow the public to speak when they haven't followed the procedure. It's board policy.
I understand. I didn't see any sign when I walked in the door that said that I needed to fill out a slip in order to address the board.
There's a table right outside the door that has the slips on it, the agendas on it, and our board policy on it.
Can the board put it to a vote?
It is not our policy to allow comments, but yeah. We'll have you fill out the slip anyway, just so we have it for our records for the minutes.
So I can't comment though?
You can comment, but
Okay.
I would like you to fill out that slip
Absolutely.
when you're done.
Absolutely. Of course, of course. Thank
And
you.
the board policy is that you can only comment for 5 minutes, just so you know.
I understand. I'm not going to filibuster. It's hot. I appreciate it.
Turn the mic on though for us.
Yes, yes. Okay, my name's Tony Ruiz, resident of Harvey. I've got 2 children in MAPS. It's hot. I really, don't necessarily want to be here. I appreciate everyone's time. But I'm here because I do have a significant complaint that, I just would not feel like I was doing the due diligence to the community if I wasn't expressing it to the board. And it really has to do with the 6th grade pre-algebra program. I guess I've taken some notes here, and really what happened is that the administration, whoever, I don't know, they dropped the ball on 6th graders at Bothwell, in my opinion. I have a son who is in 6th grade, B student in math. but he was close to the 90th percentile according to the most recent NWEA testing. He's got an IEP. He's been to 3 different schools in 3 years. Before that, I mean, like every other kid, was in the pandemic, and this is his first year in middle school. Unfortunately, no parent was told that there was this pre-eligible track that their kids could get onto. They weren't told at the beginning of the year, they weren't told at the middle of the year, and how parents came to find out, at least how I came to find out, was because my daughter, who was 10, not in middle school, was in the back of our car, talking to her older friend who said, hey, my mom just got an email saying I'm in pre-algebra. To me, that's a failure. It's a failure to inform the parents. It's a failure to really do right by the students, because how are the parents supposed to know what is supposed to be expected of the students throughout the year to get onto the right track? My kid's good at math. I know he's good at math. I know that he could handle the pre-algebra program. Had I known that I didn't go to MAP schools. I didn't know that this was the track that we had to take now. I've tried to address it, and the feedback I get is, well, he can double up in high school. That's a failure to me. I think it's a failure to the kids, and all I can, I guess, ask the board now is the next 5th grader going into 6th grade, maybe the school will be a little bit more transparent about what's expected of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business. Consider Wit and Wisdom curriculum purchase. I believe that is in our packet. And it was something that was alluded to earlier.
I'll make a motion to consider the purchase of the Wit and Wisdom curriculum.
Support.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Klipp, support by Mrs. Maddox Smith. Any further comments or questions?
So I just want to understand that, there's the discount, right? And then, but the 317 is covered by grant money. So the grant isn't 400,000.
The grant is over 400,000, 35J. That total amount is for 4 years. That's not an annual thing. So 4 years, so in the 5th year, an annual cost of about 50,000 in supplies would be needed for the district.
Okay.
So the grant will fully cover the big purchase.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
This has a expiration date of December of 2024. Is that in reference to just an older invoice, or?
We've been going back and forth a lot, so yeah, and actually this total will probably be reduced because we did a pilot and we pulled some of those supplies out of already the 35J fund, so that total will be decreased because we just finished that pilot.
And the grant, my understanding, the grant is already approved. Like, it's not like pending. Like,
No, yeah, we've already had it. Yep.
It's okay.
It started in the fall. Any other questions? Thanks.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then we have motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Consider superintendent recommendation for construction manager interviews. So as mentioned, those would take place July 1st, and we would invite 3 of the 4 to the interviews.
I'll make a motion to consider the superintendent's recommendation to interview 3 of the 4 applicants for the construction manager. Interviews to be done on the 1st.
Second.
All right, motion made by Ms. Ray, support by Mrs. Klipp, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, any further comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Consider amendment to the 2024-2025 budget.
I'll make a motion to consider the amendment to the 2024-2025 budget as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Klipp, support by Mrs. Thomas. All those in favor, or any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Consider adoption of the 2025-2026 budget resolution.
I'll make a motion to consider adoption of the 2025 to 2026 budget resolution.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Ms. Thomas, support by Mrs. Klipp. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Consider approval of the L4029. What's this one?
So the,
Too far away from the microphone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So the L4029 is a tax form that needs to be adopted by the board on an annual basis, and that form establishes the tax rates that we're going to levy for the upcoming year. So the first slide of my presentation, I showed the tax rates for the last 3 years and then what we anticipate for the 25-26 year. And the L4029 has been vetted by both our attorneys, Troon, and we have also had it vetted by PFM, which is our bond advisors. So they have signed off on it. So all we're looking for is the board to officially authorize those villages for 25-26.
no previous changes. It's just the same rates from last year, correct?
There was a slight decrease to the rate for the sinking fund due to the Headley rollback.
So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the L-4029.
Support. Okay, motion made by Ms. Ray, support by Mrs. Maddox Smith. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, designate depositories for school funds. Incredible Bank, Primary, Michigan Liquid Asset Fund, U.S. Bank, Fifth Third Bank, Flagstar Bank, Honor Credit Union, Nicolay National Bank, and Range Bank.
I'll make a motion to consider designating depositories for the school funds as listed.
Support.
Designate depositories. It's an adjective in this case. Sorry.
Motion made by Mrs. Klipp, support by Ms. Ray. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Consider approval of the 2025-2026 MHSAA membership resolution. This is something that we do every year to allow our athletes to participate in the high school athletics, correct?
I'll make a motion to consider the approval of the 2025-26 MHSAA membership resolution.
Support. Okay, motion made by Ms. Ray, support by Mrs. Maddox Smith. Any further comments or questions?
Just out of curiosity, what is the cost to engage with MHSAA for both middle school and high school?
If you want to step up, Mr. Ingles, that's fine.
There's no fee for being a member. The way they generate their money is through the tournament events. They take just about all of that revenue from ticket sales.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Consider MASB membership and legal trust fund renewal.
I'll make a motion to consider the MASB membership and legal trust fund renewal.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Ms. Ray, support by Ms. Thomas. And then I will have to abstain from this vote since I am on the MASB Board of Directors. Do we have any further comments or questions regarding this? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
One abstention. Motion passes. Set board meeting dates for the remainder of 2025. Those are also in your packets.
I'll make a motion to set the board meeting dates for remainder of 2025.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Ms. Ray, supported by Mr. Zednik. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to board member comments. We'll start with Ms. Thomas.
Thank you to our speakers and no further comment.
Mrs. Maddox-Smith?
Just thank everybody for coming out on this hot day and pointing out how much we really do need our infrastructure as we sit here in this very warm room. Thank you, Mr. Ingles, for that very quick and informative update on our students. We really appreciate your enthusiasm and your hard work. Thank you. The presentation was long, but thank you, Jim, for putting it all together for us and helping us understand it. It's a lot, and the budget it's going to be a fluid situation. So I'm sure we'll see changes as time goes by. Thanks everybody for their hard work. The wit and wisdom, I really appreciate that breakdown because you hear it, but when you guys explain it to us, it's like, oh, that makes so much more sense. So thank you all for all the hard work you're putting in for our district.
Okay, Mrs. Klipp?
Just quickly, Mr. Ingles, I don't want to be dismissive or patronizing, I guess, but I do want to verbalize how impressive and how much professional growth I've seen from you. You are a delight. You are a really great asset to this district, and I think about you coming in last year and what a difference a year has made. So just very grateful for you. Thanks, ladies. It's always great to talk about what the kids are actually doing. That's why we're here. Mr. Lampman, again, you are the only person who can help me make even a little bit of sense of an elephant that's that big. And I, again, thank you for not including emojis or trying to make that joke. It was really well done. Thank you.
Mr. Zednik?
I appreciate the work of all of our speakers tonight and all the work that went into the presentations. Great job to everyone. That's it.
Ms. Ray?
That one up.
That was very brief.
Just thanks. It's obvious there's a lot of big stuff happening within all of the walls of our schools, and it really is because of you all working in them diligently and for the students. So appreciate all of that. Thank you.
Okay, board president comments. Just echoing everyone else, thank you guys so much for coming out and for all of your hard work. Announcements and other meetings. September 2nd, 2025 is going to be the first day of school. And then July 21st will be our regular board meeting here in the Little Theater at 5:30. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Zednik, support by Mrs. Klipp. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.